The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Classcraft. We're excited to announce Classcraft's new story mode, which makes it easy for educators to harness the power of stories. Episodes 1 and 2 of Season 1 are ready for you and your students to play today, and it's completely free. To learn more about Classcraft and the new story mode, simply visit classcraft.com/oneducation.
That actually pisses me. I get, Glenn tells me to, he's climbing me down off the wall because I'm going after people. All right, everybody, welcome to this month's episode of Dig It or Ditch It. This is your hottest or at least lukewarm takes on education and everything else going on in the world with our best friend, Noah Geisel. Welcome, Noah.
Hey, guys. So great to be with you for what I'm guessing is our last Dig It or Ditch of 2020. 2019.
I guess that is. I guess it's it. This is it. This is the end.
It. It was a good year, though.
Great year.
It was a great
good
year.
Run.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome.
Tell us the way it goes, Noah. How does this all work?
Dig It or Ditch It works like this, y'all. I put out a topic, and Mike and Glen riff on it, beginning with whether they are digging or ditching that topic. And we're going to roll right in with a quote from one of my favorite people on Twitter, at Sunny Brown, Sunni Brown. And it is, unkindness comes from certainty. Unkindness comes from certainty. Dig it or ditch it, guys.
Gosh, that's
a
deep thought. Sorry,
I'm
go
into
ahead,
it. I got it. I'm ditching it. I think
that was very certain of you, Mike.
Yeah. No, I'm here for it now. Unkindness comes from certainty. I have to say that a lot of I like the phrasing, and I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around the actual context. I think is a little bit missing in this case, but I find that a lot of people, when they're unkind, also would have misplaced certainty. Maybe is the word the way I want to frame it, where they think they know what the hell they're talking about, but they actually don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they're certain in that. It's also it goes along with that whole phenomenon of people who aren't very smart, always have this overinflated sense of their brilliance. That's I can't remember the word for it, but there's this attribute that people like Donald Trump, for example, would have, where he thinks he's an absolute genius, and we all know he's an absolute train wreck.
But that's how you really feel,
right? But that's kind of the same thing. Where I mean, but he's obviously so unkind, and he's obviously so not a good person at all, yet completely certain of his abilities and his statements and facts. I think he might be actually a really good example of unkindness, coming from certainty. So yeah, let's ditch it, because I think that's a bad trait to have, for sure.
The statement itself, as Mike circled around that whole entire thing, it actually was really good for me to kind of flesh out what I was actually thinking about. The statement itself is actually, I guess I'm going to dig it. What Mike is actually saying, though, I totally agree with him, is just because you're certain about something doesn't mean that you have to throw down the gauntlet on everybody else. And I think this is where we're at right now, especially in the United States, as far as our interactions with each other. And it doesn't even matter on what topic, especially regarding politics, but my goodness, you can spread it out to anything now. It's really hard to have, when people used to say, okay, there's certain topics around the dinner table with your family or friends, right, you should just not bring up. That list of topics is now so gigantic that we can't, it's very difficult to have discourse and to have a middle ground and to have someone state an opinion that, or a certainty even of something that they totally believe in. And then us go, oh, I don't totally agree with that, but I'm not going to like burn you because of that, that kind of thing. It's this whole thing that's now missing completely. There is no kind of, I think I had a principal one time tell me, sometimes we're going to agree to disagree. That thing is, you could throw that out the window. There's no such thing as that in a lot of our discourse anymore. Yeah. And that sucks because that's limiting our ability to basically do great things because and it's easier for people to manipulate us. And I'm not even just talking about on, right wing, whatever it might be, because, we're, Mike and I are like basically left wingers, whatever it might be. I'm talking about on either end. We could be easily manipulated towards one end with easy statements. And I think we've talked about this before on Dig It or Ditch It, just this discourse and how it's led down this line. And I hope one day soon that we can just kind of break away from that. We really kind of need a leader, whoever that ends up being, especially in the United States, stepping into this role as president, to really that is true, the unification of both sides, and quit burning the people who think this certain way or this certain way, and really bring us together, I don't know, towards like doing positive things.
Yeah, it's interesting that I kind of feel like you do, Glenn, that Mike and all three of us, I think, are kind of on the same page, but maybe my wording of how I put it out there was a little weird, because I'm also digging this quote. Like when I saw her put that out there, along with her just saying, think about it. And it made me think that, like how much cruelty comes from us seeing something and just having a hot take, of jumping right to a place of certainty, of knowing what this person, means by it and where they're going by it. And that, when we look at people who maybe instead of firing back with the hot take, say, tell me more about that. Is that a road that leads to much kinder places? There's a podcast I occasionally listen to called Conversations with People Who Hate Me.
I love that. I gotta listen to that. That's a really good premise.
Season 1 was great, and in particular, where the host goes through their YouTube comments. And the people who say just the most vile and vitriolic things, the host reaches out to them and says, hey, I'm interested in talking about this. And it's so interesting because these conversations are so civil and they're so kind, even though they're, the whole conversation is rooted around, so you said that you hope I get drowned, in a tear, or whatever, right? And it's, It for me just brings home certainty is just a place that it's just on the opposite end of the spectrum of humility, I guess, and that when we can be more humble, we're probably helping more kind things come out. And with that said, I'm going to mix it up for our last Dig It or Ditch It of 2019, and help you get to a slightly less hot take place. Okay. And that's, instead of making you dig or ditch, we're going to do our remaining topics on underrated or overrated.
Ooh, underrated or overrated. Okay.
Yeah, and what I mean by this, so new rules is, for this one, you're not saying whether you like it or dislike it. You're saying, like, based on where you think the society currently is at, do you think that this idea is overrated or underrated? And so, in other words, if it's underrated, you'd be buying stock in it because it's, it's undervalued. Yeah. All right?
It's undervalued right now. Okay, I get you.
Yeah, Glenn gets to go first.
All right, we'll let Glenn go first. Overrated or underrated? Okay. The value of people of color giving keynotes, since we're in conference season.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's a softball. And I want to make sure I'm saying it the right way. So underrated would be, I'm betting on
there is more value than what is currently out there that is so, as hot as it is, underrated. It is not near where it will be.
So underrated. And I hope that soon that the organizers of these conferences, like you, Noah, you do this and I know you do this specifically as far as reaching out and trying to pull in a diverse, whoever it might be, presenters, or they might be keynote givers, whatever it might be, that you really dig deep beyond let's just call them the obvious people at the top. You know what I mean? That there's so many more diverse voices out there on a variety of different, and the diversity is multitude. It's not just racial. I'm just talking about multitude diversity that can really strike home for all of us as educators. And then we can pass that on, obviously, whatever happens as far as the inspiration, those things that happen in keynotes, pass that on, obviously, to our students. So super underrated. I think that the organizers of all of these events need to be digging deeper beyond that peripheral top, because it's super easy. I think it's super easy to see kind of this. I don't even organize events, and I could pick out the top 1% of whoever might be. And there are some diverse people in that, but it's very minuscule, and we could definitely do better.
I also think it's incredibly underrated. There's just so much experience, life experience, not even teaching experience, but also teaching experience that other people have that I just don't have, and that you just don't have, and the voices of these people just haven't been shared as much as they should be, and that's why, for example, I'm a giant fan of Michael Bonner. Is actually a really good example of someone that's getting the attention he deserves, not just for the great work he's doing now, but like his lived experience is an incredible story. And to be honest, I share as much as Glen's life experience is an incredible story that more people need to hear, and I can't wait to see the days when Glen shares his story with more and more people. And even though, it's funny because we've actually had some really interesting conversations with people on Twitter that don't even realize that Glen's a Latino. And that actually pisses me. I get, Glen tells me that, he's climbing me down off the wall because I'm going after people, because it pisses me off, to be honest, because they obviously haven't listened to Glen, and they don't know Glen's story, and they don't know us, and they don't know me. And so they don't know that we talk about this stuff all the time. But I can't wait to see and hear the stories of so many of these educators working in communities of color and minority communities, because I think that we all have something to learn from them. And so it's great that people are starting to think about and making sure that those voices are being heard a lot more. I think that we're making progress, and it's exciting.
I'm loving y'all's takes on this. I know Glenn started out saying it was a softball, but I think that it is a very hot topic right now, and something that is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And so that's why I thought it might be an intriguing time, because I think it is very highly valued right now. And more people are realizing it, and I think that it is also still hugely underrated. I think it is highly valued. It is nowhere near where it will be. And all you need to do is go to a conference that has somebody who's not like a me or a Mike give a keynote, but thank you so much to everybody who brings me in. And, when you have, folks who aren't, you have this whole, giant constituents of your attendees who are then, waiting in line 30 minutes afterwards to speak to the presenter because, for once they saw themselves reflected on stage, right?
Sure. Yep.
And I think that, it shouldn't be for once. It should be all the time. And until it is, this will be, I think, a topic that I'm agreeing with you guys will be underrated. Next up, the notion that education today is failing. Overrated or underrated?
Do you want to go first, Mike, on that one?
No, but I will.
Okay.
The notion that education is failing. Wow, this is a tough one. Boy, oh boy. Let's go with overrated, but I'm not going to say it's significantly overrated, to be honest. And I think that there are amazing people doing amazing work. There are things going on in education that I feel like, as my personal kind of community has grown and I'm meeting new people all the time, I'm certainly more optimistic now than I've ever been about the state of education, to be honest, because I'm seeing a lot more than I've ever seen. I'm traveling all over the world. I just came back from China and saw amazing things there, and I'm seeing amazing things in Vancouver and Halifax and Nova Scotia and in Newfoundland, where my coworkers are doing Minecraft sessions just today and tomorrow, and I'm seeing this, and we're about to go to Minnesota, and I have no doubt we're going to see people doing amazing things there as well. And so the more I've gotten out and met people, I'm actually way more positive about the state of education than probably I've ever been. That being said, I think it's fair to say there's still lots of work to do, especially on the political front, especially on the funding and where the money is and teacher pay and the things like that. There's a lot of failure there. I think that what is predominantly my feeling now is that teachers are rising above the hands that they're given all the time, especially in the United States, and doing amazing things with the resources, the very limited resources that they have, and rising above the challenges that they've been given, in these communities and with the daily struggle of bathrooms that aren't functioning and walls that are crumbling, and all of this we can talk about all of that stuff, and we should talk about all of that stuff, and this podcast is very focused on talking about a lot of that stuff. But to suggest that education is failing because of a lot of that stuff, I think is simply untrue.
I would also say that I agree with Mike that it's overrated. And the way that statement is used as far as education is failing, it has been used is as political propaganda, basically against public education. It's easy then to go ahead and just basically throw out this statement of like saying education is failing and this is how we're going to measure that. And that's really the key, is like, okay, it's failing, but according to what measure, whatever it might be. Well, the measure has consistently been high stakes standardized testing.
Test scores.
And these high stakes standardized tests, we found many times, are written for a specific type of audience. We just finished talking about what kind of audience. It's not the kids that are actually in our classrooms. It's a specific kind of student. It's a white student in a upper middle class neighborhood or above that's has specific context in their life that the tests are written for, and we're going to measure them on that. But the statement, why would you ever state that as far as education is failing? Well, as a politician or as someone trying to make a political movement, or even as a textbook company, I'm going to throw them out there too. The reason why you would do this is to basically sell something else. So what is that? That other vision, that other thing, whatever it might be. Well, we need to improve our schools. It's called, we need to standardize education. We need to make sure we start pinpointing these things. I'm going to sell you this product to make sure you can go ahead and meet those specific things, whatever that we're measuring. And politicians, a lot of them are selling this vision of public schools suck. And therefore, there's these other options that are way better. We should be helping to subsidize those things. And we're talking about whether they be charter school visions or private schools, especially, whatever it might be, that this vision is for this other thing that's actually happening. And we all know that that's part of the propaganda of that statement. That's the reason why I would say that is highly overrated as far as saying education is failing.
Yeah. What is it that Mayor, remember what Mayor said about textbook companies? They create the disease and then they sell you the cure.
Yeah.
Such a great line.
I'm with you. And if anybody's listening to Glenn kind of go on his take there and nodding along and snapping your fingers, highly recommend checking out Audrey Waters' most recent blog post from a couple weeks ago on her Hack Learning website, where she shares the complete text of a talk she gave recently on agitprop, agitation propaganda, that very much aligns with everything Glenn said. I won't spoil it for anybody. I'm with you guys. I think it's dramatically overrated, the notion that education today is failing. Honestly, for me, it's for slightly different reasons, though. I think that it's kind of rooted in a real false nostalgia, that, we had it all figured out in the past. You know what I mean? And
yes. Yes.
One of the things I like to joke about is that, and I can go, to an airport or whatever and see people of any age group get to the top of an escalator and come to a complete stop. Right? Which is just the dumbest thing you can possibly do. And so, if education's failing, it's not a new thing. Yeah. There's the false nostalgia. And, I also think that it's rooted in, things like, well, back in the day, especially as Glenn pointed out with historical inequities, it was okay that school didn't work for a whole giant segment of our population. We had 50% graduation rates, and so success was only based on the 50% who did make it, right? And that's no longer okay. In a lot of ways, I think that makes us, more successful, that we're taking into greater account our people. Next up, guys, we're going to turn from the past to the future.
Okay.
One of the hot topics right now, especially in educational technology, is going to be artificial intelligence. Overrated or underrated? Educators' understanding of artificial intelligence.
These are really good, Noah. Oh my God.
I actually think, okay, so if I don't know, again, I'm making sure that I actually put it on the right thing.
Yeah,
here's what I believe.
Overrated or underrated? Educators' understanding of artificial intelligence.
I think that educators, and I would put myself into this class too, I don't understand artificial intelligence enough, and I need to understand it more. So does that make me overrated or underrated?
You think it is overrated?
Yes. So there is many of us that just don't, we hear the term, we know that there's some significant impact, but we don't even know how to actually explain it. And when I hear people, including politicians like Andrew Yang, for example, specifically explain the impact that artificial intelligence will have on our future, but not the distant future. We're talking about 5 to 10 years from now, how impactful it will be on what the world looks like. That wakes me up and goes, I need to learn more about this. And then not only do I need to learn more about it, we need to start discussing this in our schools and talking about what is the impact of this and how does it impact education, of course, but the job market, the job sectors, what we're going to be doing as far as in future years. And do we need to be worried or do we need to be excited about it and then being able to go ahead and move forward with that? I don't know if that's pro or against it, but I do know that I lack in that education.
For educators to upskill
yes.
on their readiness for AI.
AI, yes, that is. How about you, Mike?
I think it's underrated. I think that Glenn nailed the point that I was going to nail about the future of work. I think that I can easily see a world in 50 years where the workforce is considerably smaller. The actual people doing labor is less. I think that educators are fairly safe. In fact, there's been a lot of study about the future of education in terms of the actual labor, the actual people doing work. And, education is one of those roles that seems to be less affected by AI and automation than a lot of other roles. But, there are whole industries that exist now that will be completely replaced by machines in the next 20 years. A lot of transportation industries, a lot of manual labor industries most manual labor is already replaced. A lot of service industries, So I think the future of work and preparing. So as far as it relates to education, the idea of preparing our students for a world where the jobs, like, I want to almost flip this narrative about the future jobs, like 2030, whatever, that a lot of people talk about, and just remind kids that the jobs that exist now may not exist in the future. Like, it's flipping that narrative just a little bit, in the sense that there's people doing work now that those jobs aren't going to be available to our students, because they won't need people doing them. I also think that there's some hidden opportunities in AI, opportunities again that because it's a incredibly emerging field and space. There are things that we haven't even invented yet in terms of AI that are going to provide some really interesting, I suspect, are going to provide some really interesting opportunities for our kids, and make their lives better, hopefully, anyways. So I don't think I need educators, especially like my son's grade 6 teacher. I don't need her to take a deep dive into AI and go take like university courses, and like I think I'm because I think that's a ridiculously unrealistic expectation. There are grade 6 teachers that don't even know what Flipgrid is, for God's sakes, let alone trying to have them wrap their heads around, AI and machine learning. But to have them understand that the future is uncertain, and that the future of work is uncertain, and all we really know is that it's going to be predominantly machine-based, I think, is fairly certain, and something that we can prepare our kids for in small ways as they're going through school now.
Wow, and for anybody who didn't catch what Mike did there, where he slipped in the machine learning, if you're sitting there listening to this thinking, I think I need to up my understanding of AI, that's a great place to start, is just at a definition level of wrapping your head around the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning, two things that definitely get lumped in together. And if you don't know the difference, that might be a great sign that on the understanding of AI place, you're on one end of the bell curve.
It's complex.
I'm gonna go with Glenn on this one and say I think it's dramatically overrated, and I'm feeling a whole lot more urgent than Glenn. I think that 5 years from now is not even close. I think it's already happening. I think it's gonna be happening a whole lot more in 2020, and it's gonna be pretty close to ubiquitous by 2021. And I'm sounding an alarm here, guys, because I'm seeing people who I respect, tweet and blog about, things educators need to know about artificial intelligence. And, there's a lot of, shiny stuff around, things you can do to make your own Alexa commands and stuff, right? But something that's really missing is, I think a grasp of the ethics. And, going especially for, back to Glenn's, kind of focus on the historical inequities. One of the key things to know about artificial intelligence is it's not born. It's not born intelligent.
That's right.
That artificial intelligence learns a whole lot faster, and with a whole lot, just quazillions more, pieces of information than a human can take in. And it does this through training sets of data. And, so if we're looking in the education space and we're going to have AI, the data that is training the AI to recognize patterns is going to be historical data. And historical data in any context, but we know real well in education, is chock full of bias. And so if we are, not careful and really keeping a close eye on our, ethics about this and cleaning up our data and checking it for bias, then what we are doing is creating a really intelligent tool that has been completely trained up on, biased information that can then be used as a very convenient and easy way to do things like data-driven decision-making, They said, well, this is what the data is telling us. Therefore, this is a decision we need to make. And we're making that decision in a way that is only going to perpetuate the very worst of things that we've already done and ensure that we continue to do them. So I think it is overrated educators' understanding of AI that we need to start sounding some alarms. If we're, and listeners, if you are in conversations where people are excitedly talking about big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and nobody's talking about using words like clean up the data or, talking about ethics, then, please, the OnEducation podcast crew encourages you to be the person who stands up, puts their foot down, and says, this is going to keep me up at night, and I hope it's keeping everybody else in this room up at night unless we're taking it seriously.
The equity piece is huge, too. I was part of an interesting conversation a couple months ago about equity in programming careers. Making sure that there's not only women programmers and designers, but people of color as well. Because and the way they framed it, the person who was speaking was super simple. When there's equity in the jobs, there's equity in the programming. And when you said that machines are taught, the AI is going to be taught by programmers, by people injecting code and information and data into these systems to allow them to learn. If it's just a bunch of white dudes inputting the system, there's going to be blank spaces. There's going to be whole views and lenses that aren't that these machines won't see the world through because they're taught. They're not. They're not like humans that can evolve and adapt. Not in the same way, anyways. So I think that there's a whole piece around equity and diversity in, the careers now, even, because I think that those careers are going to frame our future. And our future our machine learning needs to be diverse as well. It's an absolutely fascinating conversation.
You keyed on something that's a very easy kind of tangible thing to point at. You both talked about jobs and human resources, right? And if you listen to podcasts, you're hearing ads right now for I don't want to promote any given company, but you're hearing ads for companies that are talking about they're using AI, right, to help identify jobs. And so again, if we're feeding the AI historical data, it doesn't know that maybe one of the reasons why it doesn't know that women historically took maternity leave a whole lot more often than men did, right? And so it all of a sudden starts identifying, male candidates over female candidates based off of, kind of incomplete information that's
Sure. Yep.
that's on its face just biased, right? Final question to take us out of 2020. Underrated or overrated are spouses' patience with us?
I just came back from 2 weeks away. My spouse's patience is incredibly underrated. It's funny. I was in the last day of my trip. I was in Vancouver, so I came back from Hong Kong and was in Vancouver for a couple of days, doing training out there. And I sent my wife flowers. From Vancouver, I called the flower shop and sent her flowers to her school because, and that won't even come close to making up for how much work she would have had to put up with so that I could go, tour around South China for a week and a half. The irony, obviously, is that I used to get complained to because I didn't work hard enough, and now I work too hard. I've switched to the entire end of the spectrum, and but both are a problem. And my wife has now dealt with both sides of this equation, which is incredible. Cheryl is seeing, I think, that I'm working really hard and trying to do some good work, and so I can't appreciate her patience and her effort more than I do. And even when I'm bad at articulating it, hopefully she at least listens to this and understands
Your
that
wife doesn't listen to this podcast, does she?
She, believe it or not, she does. I actually didn't think she did.
Otherwise, her voice is enough, man.
She has begun to comment on almost every episode, so I know that she's listening. So I can't, especially in the context of my current travel and stuff like that. Like, I literally am home for 5 days, and then I'm in Minnesota, and then thankfully I'm home for a couple of weeks, but then I'm in Florida at FETC. Like, I mean, it's crazy. So I can't thank her enough for being patient. It's massively underrated.
I will say right now that my wife's patience with me, after now it's almost 19 years of marriage, and we were together since we were 18, and I'm now going to be 44. It's been a lot of years. I mean, what an incredible person to want to go ahead and tolerate me. My goodness. Talk about incredibly underrated. Always is super supportive of all of the crazy things that I want to endeavor in, whether it be what we're doing right now as far as podcasting or going to conferences or anything else. Actually, all of my dreams that I've ever had about anything, always 100% supportive behind me. And then all of those other horrible traits that I have, character defects galore, and willing to go ahead and tolerate all of those things. That's the real stuff. It's not even just these things that are positive things in life. There's a lot of other crap that's, man, what an amazing person. I'm super lucky to have her. It's an easy question to weigh out. It's an incredibly underrated human being. I still ask her sometimes too. I was like, how are you still here? We just laugh together about that then too. Yes. How about you, Noah?
Yep, dramatically underrated patience from Ashley Guys. Although it's going to get tested tonight, as I realize I'm both 15 minutes later that I said I'd be to go throw the steaks on the grill, and pretty sure that I'm out of propane. So the patience is going to get tested tonight, fellas.
So you better get to that.
So with that, Noah needs to go do some cooking.
Yes.
So
Please.
with a love letter to all of our wives, we'll end this episode of Dig It or Ditch It. And thanks everyone for listening. Say goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Noah.
Hey, happy holidays to all the listeners. Thanks for helping make OnEducation the top podcast for all of your topics and conversation on education. And Mike and Glenn, thanks for allowing me to take part in the journey. It's a real joy to be in part of your orbit.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glenn Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the Education Podcast Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Jennifer Gonzalez, Matt Miller, and many more by visiting edupodcastnetwork.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found at Irv Spanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at OnEducationPod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Classcraft, for supporting us. Check out classcraft.com/oneducation to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening, stay awesome, and see you soon.